Well, hello. I am Tigress Sydney Acute McDaniel, your host of Evolve Weekly, the Ethical Gatekeeper. And we are here a little bit late. I had an urgent matter to handle. And so I thank you for your patience and understanding. And I've also noticed that a lot of you are tuning in after the fact. So hopefully it's not too much of an inconvenience for you, considering that I set the schedule. So we're going to dive right in to part two, but we're going to keep it pretty short because this really is a straightforward matter. I continue to express that reiteratively in my initial broadcast on this subject matter. And tonight we will discuss some straightforward issues that, because of its straightforwardness, it just does not require much time. And we need to be unified in solidarity for justice and to stand against the things that we're going to discuss tonight, so that it is well understood. The standard is set, anchored even, in that there will be zero tolerance for this covert political bullying, political discrimination, racial bullying, racial discrimination, gender bullying, gender discrimination in our universities. How does that relate to a spike degree? I assert very directly so. In the sense that, if you recall, I spoke about how, and I'm sorry, I'm hearing a bit of noise. I hope you're not hearing that. I'm not really sure if you can. Remember, I am definitely live. So I'm not really sure what that is, but hopefully it will subside. The spike degrees, according to the Essence article, they are called spike degrees because they are sought after, these degrees are sought after a bad breakup with a partner. And so the notion is that the woman then pursues a degree in a glow up type of, get my lip back by glowing up on you type of way. And alternatively, they get the degrees when they are experiencing economic hardship and have no other means of income, and then decide, okay, well, this is a win-win type of situation. I can go to school, get my degree, have the comeuppance, and I can also have income from, I guess, student loans or income from graduate funding, scholarships and the like, right? So, and I've expressed to you how both lanes can be very, very dangerous. Very dangerous if you pursue a degree out of spite for either of those reasons. And I use my life as an example, my matriculation through academia. If I had no true love for what I intended to pursue, and my process was a very deliberate process, and I've explained it to you all before. Those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I'll just kind of give you the rundown very quickly. I am a scientist to my core, and that is my first love, and that's where I started. I also knew that I was definitely interested in environmental law because I knew, with forethought, if you will, and that deliberation and understanding how I wanted to impact and contribute to my field of study, research, and policy surrounding environmental sustainability, I knew that I wanted to pursue law as well. So I started off applied science major, applied physical science major, and I decided to take education. So agricultural education and environmental science. That was my concentration. And swine husbandry and wetland bioremediation was my specialization. And I soon realized in my my internships, my work with the Park Service, I started as a GS4 with the National Park Service at Shenandoah National Park. And also I supported the rangers at the National Mall as well. And I realized that in meetings and conferences that I attended, they wanted to hear about how much money is this going to cost us? Is this going to make sense for the budget that we have for whatever environmental sustainability project we have on the table? And so then I realized, okay, I'm going to need to learn the language of economics, because no one was really impressed. I'll be honest with you. They were not really impressed by the scientists. Or I'll say this. It's not so much as they weren't impressed. They were more impressed by hearing from the Economist and their benefit cost analysis, right? And so I then went for my master's degree in agricultural economics and rural development. And now you can see, if you're familiar with my degrees and they're on the screen there, then it makes perfect sense for my process. Now, I've always been a research scientist. I've thankfully been in the capacity anytime, that I obtained a position in my profession, I had the great privilege of serving in the capacity as the principal investigator or the lead scientist. So I quite what should I say? I also understood the spaces of decision making, because the lead scientist, the principal investigator, would be invited to the table when it's a decision-making process, right? So you would be invited to those board meetings and conferences with the executives of whatever organization that you're working for. And I did also work for a private research firm as well in Greensboro, North Carolina. And we were testing pesticide leaching for residential application. So we were taking urine samples for our subjects, human subjects, out of Gastonia. And I would drive down from Greensboro to Gastonia on a regular and, pick up the samples. And of course, these individuals volunteered to be a part of this study, and they were basically just doing what it sounds like. They were applying pesticide to their residential lawns. And then I was testing to determine if there was significant leaching, which means that was there significant exposure to the human subjects. So basically, I knew that being in those spaces, I was privy to the executive operations, if you will, right? And not just my capacity as research scientist. And so in those rooms, now I'm in these, after I have my master's degree, I'm thinking, okay, we're here. And I wasn't in a rush to go to law school. I started law school in 2002. And some of you know the story. I actually had to withdraw because I was in a car accident where I had to learn to walk again. My father passed away, just a number of things that happened in that year. But I started off at North Carolina Central University. And at that time, it was the #1 Black law school. It was the #1 law school for Black women. So I then get into these spaces again, this boardroom, the conferences where, what do we call them colloquially? The big wigs are sitting around a table and they're making decisions, right? And now in these advanced spaces, I'm learning that the law is what is paramount in determining decisions. So the primary factor was law at this point, environmental policy. We need to make sure that we're compliant in this regard, and we need to make sure that that we are contributing to environmental sustainability as it relates to environmental policy. And I was just like, wow, hilarious. So now I need to learn the language of law. And I always tell people that for me, it was a matter of, I consider them languages. I know that some people, they don't immediately see the link in the interdisciplinary nature of my academia. But I, for one, as I've explained, I think that it's quite simply put and simply shown how they all definitely lend well to one another. And they have. And that has given me a unique perspective, because I can look from not only a dual lens, I can look from this triple lens, if you will, which affords me a circumspective viewpoint, and I can best address all issues that would be related to the projects and the subject matter that I handle with the with my specialization and the skill set that I have. So basically, for me, it was a very deliberate process. And if I didn't love it, as I was referring to earlier, it would be very difficult to have navigated the politics. And this is how we're going to get to Miss Annette. I believe that's her name, Annette. And you can't, these academic spaces, they're no joke. They entail significant rigor, even more so than what you even imagine at times. Even as I matriculated from my bachelor's program to my master's program and then to my PhD program, there's some things that you can assume, you can even infer, but not until you get into the program. And you, again, have to navigate not only the literal components of your program, which is your coursework, right? Your course load, if you will. So how much reading will be required for, for any particular class, what task will be required of you, and as a function of time, how much time are you going to have in your semester to handle all the things you need to handle. And then when you get to your, because of course you've got to also write your thesis for your master's program. And in my case, I had to do it twice. Some of you know that story because it relates back to when I had to learn to walk again. I actually graduated on a walker in 2002. But my degree was not conferred until 2013 when I returned to begin my PhD program. And that alone, that's the point that I'm making, sharing that aspect of my life. all the things that you have to experience, that you necessarily experience in your personal life, aside from your life as a student, which are arguably different. They're definitely connected, but your personal life is an additional, component, if you will, to your life as a student, your life, in college, if you will. And how can you best navigate all of the things that are required, all the rigor that is required for education and intending to complete your degree in a timely manner? And of course, we're using timely manner, like comparatively. You would expect your master's program to be no more than 2 to 3 years. You would expect your PhD program to be no more than 4 to 6 years, right? And some of you know my story, and my story is not a, it's definitely, it's unique, if you will, with regards to the interdisciplinary nature of my programs, which are normally seen to be completely opposite of one another, because you don't find many scientists who are going to pursue the field of law, because generally scientists, they want to stay in the labs, they want to stay in the field, they want to stay in the classrooms. They don't want to litigate, they don't want to be the lawyer, they don't want to do that aspect of the job. They will show up and be an expert witness and give expert testimony in a case, but they typically don't have the same core, they also typically don't have the same core values, I'll be honest with you, except where generally the ethics should, be the same, but that can be argued against as well. Nonetheless, the point that I'm making is that you've got to navigate your personal life, your life as a student, your life as a student socially, your life as a student, and your relationship with your peers. So whether or not you're going to have the support where you're going to be able to study together and have that camaraderie, being able to better understand the task at hand, because you're talking about harder course material. My master's program was full of econometrics courses, research statistics. It was all the things for economics. There was no diminution with regards to the economics component of it, just because it had agricultural, as the prefix colloquially, if you will. No, it was heavy on the economics. Okay. And so if I had done that just out of spite, that would just be torture. To put yourself through something like that, and you don't have any real genuine desire to pursue the educational rigor and the purpose of the program, that could be very dangerous. It can wear on you psychologically. It can wear on you physically even. And I'm saying that because, of course, they are interdependent. You know what I mean? Like, so we know that stress literally does kill. Stress literally does bring about inflammation in the body, and it can cause sickness, right? So if you're not in it for the right reasons, then it can really, really take its toll. And you may end up, worse yet, not even finishing your spike degree because you are so traumatized from everything that you've been experiencing, and you succumb to dropping out. So now you have very likely student loans, because most of us can enter a program for the, at the bachelor's level or the associate's level, and finish that program generally, because there's a significant dropout rate for even your bachelor's degree, right? Your 4-year degree, your 2-year associate's degree. But generally, most people who enter into their bachelor's and associate programs, they finish, right? And they finish generally without debt, without student loans, because there's typically state grants that are available to in-state students, and scholarships available. Those are all more readily available to you at the bachelor's and associate's level. When you get to the master's level, that is not as readily available. There are scholarship programs, there's work study, you can work as a research scientist, lab instructor. I've done all the things, right? You can even take work study jobs that are unrelated to your program of study. I've done that too, where I worked in the call center, calling alumni to raise funds, for the university. I've done that. But when you get to the PhD level and law school, you're either going to have to be like rich, have had a trust fund, I don't know, some type of come up in your life to, if you want to just pay out of pocket for law school. Otherwise, you are going to begin assuming student loans in your PhD and your law school program, and more specifically law school, because you don't have an advisor in law school as you would in your PhD program, because your advisor serves as the chair of your dissertation committee, right? And so you don't have that necessarily with the JD program. And with the PhD program, there is explicit to your program is that you come in, when you're accepted, they are matching you with a professor who has consistent research with your interests, right? Or not only your interests, but your expertise from your master's or your past, your past academic work and your past professional work, right? So you're matched up with someone, and then you then benefit from the funding that professor has for his research that is already underway. And so they expect you to contribute, and then in turn, you receive funding. You may receive it in the form of a teacher's assistant, and sometimes that's even additional to the funding that is available through your advisor, right? So you can be a teacher's assistant, lab instructor, and I did all the things, right? Research assistant. And but that money is still not sufficient for sustaining an adult livelihood. And especially in my case, I was and am a single mother. So that would not have taken care of all of my bills, but it definitely was good income toward handling my bills. But again, it didn't take care of my tuition in full. It didn't take care of commuting expenses, gas. It didn't take care of many of the aspects of my PhD program that cost. So if you're not in it for the right reasons, you will drown. It will be very, very difficult for you to succeed in a program, especially a doctoral program. The master's program, maybe you can fake the funk. Maybe someone can fake the funk and get through a master's program because it's 2 years. And it is a lot more possible to do that with a master's program, knowing that you're in it for the absolute wrong reasons. You just want income because the economy's bad and you don't have any other options. So you're like, this will work. This is a, and it's a win-win. I get a degree that I really could care less about. And then I have the money. That's the real focus. And I know I got to deal with the politics of people having their own agenda. And again, we'll get to Miss Annette. And again, why these spike degrees can be so very dangerous and why we need to have solidarity and why I am a huge advocate for mental health awareness and support for Black women and men, Black and brown women and men, underserved communities, women and men, who are in these advanced programs, because again, you have the student is you in this program. You are navigating the political agendas of so many different administrators. Your dissertation chair, which is your advisor, as I mentioned before, and your committee members, they may all portray themselves as having a unified vision consistent with what your research interests are. And you may have presented your proposal, your research proposal, that is your preliminary exam. So if you've heard the process of achieving candidacy, PhD candidacy is achieved by first passing the qualifying exam, which is a 2-day, 8-hour course. 8-hour test. And the first part of the test is comprehensive. So you can be tested on any subject matter that relates to your field, your previous degrees, if you will, right? And so that can be a lot, especially for my background. And the next part of your test, and it's mixed methodology, So you're going to have some multiple choice. You may have open answers, right? You may have essays. In my case, it's economics. I had a portion that was specific. There was only, I want to say it was only maybe 5 or 6 of us who were on the economics track. And we had a specific section that was dedicated to, it tests us on economic principles. So of course we had, to show our work with graphs and math and all the things, right? Applied econometrics. Now, of course, that was limited in one regard because you run regression, not generally, in your mind, like you do math in your mind. And so you would normally do that with a computer. So of course, there were some aspects that could not be done that way. And so we weren't tested in that particular regard, but they would still ask questions to make sure we understood linear regression versus whatever, and all the things, right? So, and then there was another part of the test, the second day, that was specific to your specialization. And for me, my specialization is what? Wetland bioremediation. So I had a ton of questions on wetland bioremediation. And the whole point here is to determine if you are proficient in your field of study. And at this juncture in your education, you should be. You should be able to speak fluently for 20, 30 minutes on topic, and intelligently so, and also be able to communicate that in a manner that can be well received and understood by, a mixed audience. And there you have it. So again, these are not little things that you're doing in these programs. So pursuing a PhD out of spite, okay. Okay, if that's your thing, but honey, that's torture. That's complete torture, right? And so that's not even, so now that doesn't even confer you for candidacy, that which I've already discussed. So you pass your qualifying exam, right? And all the while, keep in mind, you're still having to navigate your classes. You still have coursework that you have to complete. You still have classes to attend. I think there's a myth that when you're in your PhD program, you don't have classes to attend in the same fashion. Maybe you're just kind of like independent study on a regular basis. No, that's not true. I don't know of any programs that, maybe there are, but I know of no programs that are complete independent study and you have just, all this free time where you get to get your work done at your own pace. No, that doesn't exist. I know getting work done at your own pace doesn't exist in the PhD program. It doesn't exist in many master's programs either. But there may be, I would say that I would suspect that it would be more likely in a master's program as opposed to a PhD program. PhD program, it ain't happening. I could definitely see some parts of your master's program being independent study, okay? So again, going back to candidacy, you've got to pass the qualifying exam, right? Again, meanwhile, you have been taking your courses, and depending on your course load, you will continue to take courses until you meet that, satisfy that threshold of whatever credit hours and the basal courses that you have to take based on your program guide, right? All right. So you do all that. You're still not conferred as a candidate. Then you consider your research, the research you want to undertake for your dissertation, right? And then you prepare your research proposal, and that's pretty in-depth, and you have to work with your advisor, and you're working with your committee members. You're also navigating this process because they don't select your committee members. They may make suggestions, but that's something that you effectually that's politicizing as well, if you will. You literally have to pitch your research proposal even before you formally pitch it through your preliminary exam. You have to pitch it to faculty in your department, and some of them beyond your department, depending again on the subject matter of your dissertation. In my case, I had to step outside of my core department and seek, and invite faculty to serve as committee members that were in maybe the business department, where economics and applied economics is more of a focus, or in the ag econ and international business department that way. Okay. And so, and keep in mind, again, this is politics, because you don't know if I'm going to give an example. Let's see, how should I say this? These are people. I want to say it this way. They are people. They're not robots. They are people. And they are willing to serve on your committee, but what I have learned, and I've heard this from other students as well, they still technically don't, like, they're not in a contract with you as a student. So if they want to leave your committee for whatever reason, if they're leaving it because they are no longer, maybe they don't believe that you're making good, satisfactory academic progress, they can bounce. If they retire, they ready to retire, they can bounce. If they're wanting to transfer to another university, they can bounce. If they got another job that has nothing to do with their academic career, they can bounce. You see what I'm saying? Like, they can literally go. There's nothing that is contractual that binds them to stay until you complete your dissertation. So you're racing the time clock, and you are, what is the word I'm looking for? You're making sure that you are attentive to the nuances, personality-wise, academic interest-wise, of all of your committee members, and you're having to, like, really keep everybody together, right? Keep everybody on the same page, keep everybody, interested, and again, racing the time clock, because you don't know what each of these individuals has in mind. You can have discussions with them, and you still won't know everything. And I'm telling you my real life experiences. So I dealt with committee members retiring. A committee member literally after a full year was like, you know what? I really don't think that I can serve, on this committee very well, because I've tried during this time, but I really don't have a full understanding of everything that you're doing. And this last email that you sent out, it is definitely basically above my pay grade. I'm not well versed in wetland bioremediation. And so I don't think that I can best, contribute to refining and maximizing the impact of your study, because I don't really know. I don't know how to question, to pose questions that will get you to that point where this dissertative research and this dissertation will be a great contribution to, the scientific community as you intend. And there you have it. And it's basically, I get an email and honey, so the email says, this is what it is. Kind regards, bye. And that's it. And you don't get to say, okay, we'll come back. No, that's it. And then they very typically have already CC'd the graduate school and your advisor. And so it's pretty much just like a unilateral decision. They out, and that's it. And you now have to find another faculty member to fill that void, if you will. And again, all the while racing the clock. You're racing the time clock on the satisfactory academic progress, which is called SAP. Some of you are familiar with that. And so basically what I'm getting at is that there are rules, governed by the United States Department of Education that say that if you need to be making reasonable progress, matriculating in a timely manner to conclude your degree, right? And so it makes sense that and they cap it out at 10 years, so, and that's like the max, that's not ideal in, you know, in any PhD program. It's more ideal that you'll be in your program from 4 to 6 years. But they give you 10 years just in case you're having to, you know, handle your course load part-time, you know, because at that point, generally people are adults. They're full adults and they have all the adulting aspects of life. Very often they have children, families, partners, you know, they're married, whatever. And so that, you know, that definitely plays a role. So again, and I still haven't gotten to you getting conferred yet, right? As a candidate. So why in the world would you torture yourself with all that for a spite degree? Because it will take you out. It will take you out. You will succumb to the pressures, guaranteed. Guaranteed. And then you want to, you want to really understand. I'm saying this very colloquially. You want to really understand when I say the politics are thick at this level. You're dealing with people that are jaded. They don't want to be there. They're faculty administrators who have been abused. They've been, their how should I say it? Their workload has been great, has been damn near unlawful in some regards. They are worked so hard. That which I saw, my professors, advisors, committee members having to do, they are given 3 and 4 different roles that are grouped in with their, you know, their scope of duties, and they're expected to do it with a smile on their face and efficiently and into perpetuity or you know, retirement. Like, do this until you retire or you leave the university. And I mean, it's just, I can't imagine anyone doing any of this out of spite. A PhD out of spite is just, it really concerns me. It really concerns me. And then on the flip side, and so, well, let me back up. So let's go back to the candidacy. So we know that you need your preliminary, you need to pass your qualifying exam. Then you need to pass your preliminary exam. And your preliminary exam, as I stated before, is your presentation of your research proposal. So you present it to your dissertation chair, who's your advisor, and the committee members. And then they decide whether or not it is valid. Have you organized it well? Have you chosen the right methodology that will maximize the validity of your research? All the things. They're going to consider everything about your research. And then they decide, right? If you pass, then you are conferred into candidacy, right? So that's so much vetting that is going on. Again, why then would you do it out of economic plight or spite? Especially when on the side of economic plight, well, actually, both of them have very dangerous outcomes. Spite, because spite is a form of emotional unintelligence, excuse me, it is then not implausible to consider the psychological impacts that someone will face, and I mean detrimentally so, if they engage a program with such rigor and such political ick, if you will. And I'm not necessarily talking about the politics, like, you know, like our electoral colleges and all that. I'm not talking about Democrat and Republican. Now, in my case, I had to deal with that too, because I was running for public office. And so that some of my committee members had an agenda. Honey, I cannot see why someone would torture themselves, spite or economic plight, through a PhD program or a master's program or a Juris Doctorate program. And yeah, the Juris Doctorate, even though, again, there's no, you're not, well, you have the equivalent of these things, but it's not the same. So you've got to take the baby bar, which is the first year law school exam. So FYLSX. I know I got it wrong. Something like that. FLSXY, something like that. Whatever. Anyway, it's the first year law school exam. It's just an acronym that they use for it. And you have 3 times to sit for that in order to have your initial year of study count toward your degree. There are some programs that allow you to go all 4 years, but then you still have to law clerk and you still have to pass the bar exam. Like there are steps to this. And that vetting is appropriate to make sure you're proficient, because of course they entail a fiduciary duty. And I've explained that to you all in past broadcasts. Fiduciary duty basically just says that you have studied and practiced your core education to the extent that if someone, or excuse me, to the extent that your expertise can be relied upon by a layperson, right? Both ethically and literally. So how in the world then can you enter into a program like that out of spite or economic plight? So again, on the spite side, you risk your psychological health. On the economic plight side, you also risk your you also risk your psychological health, but you risk also your economic health. Because if you can't finish the program, then now you are more economically in the hole. Because now you have more debt. You have the debt of your tuition. You have the debt of student loans, very likely. And if you don't finish that program that you entered into out of economic plight, you now don't have the opportunity to qualify for jobs that would bump you up in your income bracket and thereby give you economic freedom or economic elevation from your, from your state of economic plight to economic stability. I just don't know how. I would imagine, and this is no dig against those particular programs, but the only way I could see that would work is if you were pursuing a PhD in subject matter that doesn't entail great academic rigor. And again, I'm not. I don't want to use this as a platform to even suggest that a PhD in art should be devalued in comparison to a PhD in applied science. However, I will stand on business and say that the rigor in those programs, the subject matter in those programs more specifically, is very different. And it is not only arguable, it is factual that a PhD in an applied science program would definitely entail more difficult subject matter, if you will. And I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But at the same time, I don't want to promote any type of classism in that regard. But I would say that realistically, if we're looking at this objectively, the only way that I could see a spite or economic plight degree working at the PhD level would be exactly the way I said it. Like if you were like, okay, well, I'm doing this out of spite or economic plight, and I'm going to get a PhD in English. And again, don't come for me. Don't come for me. I know that writing can be difficult, but composing essays and different forms of literary work is not as difficult as applied science. And I believe we all agree, okay? So this is a great time to segue to Miss Annette. Let's go to this. Wait, hold on. I went to it, but you didn't see it. Give me a second. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. All right. And I keep saying Annette. Antoinette Candia Bailey. And I'm just going to play the video here. Oh, sorry.
University's homecoming. She was just the epitome of hospitality and generosity. I spoke with 3 alumni today, Kitchen, Nell Cheatham, and Earl Wheatfall Sr. about Bailey's death and the fallout involving President John Mosley. Kitchen and Cheatham say they spoke with Bailey on January 6th, 2 days before she died by suicide. Bailey shared with them many concerns over Mosley's performance, calling him controlling and unwilling to take input. Bailey said she even asked for time off through the Family Medical Leave Act due to stress and anxiety, but didn't get it. She even reached out to the board in November about the same issues, but was told the board wouldn't intervene.
I leave this situation at the feet of the curators. They should have been aware of what was going on and as long as it went on.
The bullying, the harassment that she went through, it was just too much.
Lincoln University Board President Victor Pasley says a third party will now come in and review the situation. He says the board wants to make sure worker mental health is a top priority and that Mosley would be taking a paid leave of absence while it goes on. But the group says they fear the outside review is just to cover up the problems.
I see them setting this up to gaslight everybody, and that they're going to eventually find a way to reestablish him in that position.
It's going to break loose, Luke, if he's not removed from that campus.
Okay. So that is a perfect example of just one of, let me rewind this.
Gaslight everybody.
Sorry.
Absence while a third party
The harassment.
due to stress and anxiety.
Let me go back to her picture and stop there. I'm just going to leave it on that picture in honor of her. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this story, but they released the letter that she wrote to him. And it's very clear that she had been definitely subject to bullying, discrimination, the politics that I was talking about, the kind of internal administrative politics, not so much as, again, not the Republican Democratic politics, but the interactions amongst these administrators and how they wield their positions against each other, very oftentimes in a bullying fashion, harassing fashion, that of course results in the onset of anxiety, right, and stress, just as she expressed, which unfortunately led to her death by suicide. And she's a doctor, you see, Dr. Antoinette Candia Bailey. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Now, we don't have any history. We don't know any specifics with regards to whether or not she sought her degree out of spite or economic plight. But what I need you to, the reason why this story is important is because of what I mentioned in part one. And I have also alluded to in this broadcast. And so now I'll bring it for full circle for you. You see, there's too much rigor, too much integrity, too much intentionality, too much impact that goes along with these degrees for anyone to just trivialize the entire process and disrespect the entire scope of academia to get a degree out of spite or economic plight. Because those of us who are doing it for the right reasons, which is to get the degree and then work in your field and contribute to your field, because that's the whole point of the PhD level academia. At that point, what is understood, because that's the whole premise of a PhD program, is research and contributing to the body of knowledge and the advancement of the field of study that you are getting your PhD in. So if you're just going for your master's or your PhD out of spite or economic plight, you are not doing any of those things. You have no intentions of contributing to the development of your field of study, contributing to your community. In my case, the scientific community. I'm not sure what her doctorate is in. Let's see. I'm not really sure. Let's see what her doctorate's in. Okay. And that's the worst way to get into Wikipedia, is this way. The worst way. All right, so it says she was an Alpha Kappa Alpha. And we know that she was a Lincoln University alumni. She graduated the same year as me, 1998, with her bachelor's. She had a bachelor's of science in sociology. Then she earned her master's of arts in rehabilitation, counseling, disability studies. Oh my God, I wonder if, oh my God. Wait. What? Hold on, y'all. Okay, so Dr. Comfort Akpala, okay, some of you know this story. So I started my program at A&T in 2014. Oh my God, she did. I thought she looked familiar. Oh my God. Okay, so y'all know how my mind works. Most of you do. Some of you, this will be your first time learning this about me. But I mean, I've already expressed to you that I have the great capacity to do many things at once. I quite enjoy it. I love interdisciplinary learning. I love multimedia or mixed methodology learning. I love it. I am an expert in andragogy and pedagogy, which is adult education and child or children education, youth education. And I love it. I cannot get enough learning. I love it. I'm going to be a forever learner all day long. That being said, in 2014, I learned that North Carolina A&T State University started 2 programs. To my knowledge, those were the programs that I was most interested in. 2 PhD programs. These were their first PhD programs, okay? And wow. So in 2014, I started. It doesn't state when she started. Let's see if it says here. No. But we would have been taking classes around the same time. Dr. Fort, some of you know, I'm talking about the Chancellor Emeritus, which means he was a former chancellor for the university. He was a professor in the PhD program for leadership studies. And Dr. Comfort Akpala was the program chair. She was the chair for the PhD program in leadership studies. And I really loved the program for leadership studies as well. And so I had to go through Dr. Akpala and get her permission to take some courses in leadership studies simultaneously while, taking classes in my core PhD program. And she did grant me permission. I took 12 or 16 credit hours in leadership studies and quite enjoyed it. Wow. I didn't even know. Wow. Y'all give me a moment. Wow. On January 8, 2024, she sent an email to President John B. Mosley, alleging that he had subjected her to months of harassment, bullying, and racial discrimination. She died by suicide the same day at the age of 49. I'm 47. Wait, Anthony Bailey? I know Anthony, don't I? Yeah, because they're in Greensboro, North Carolina. That's where I'm from. Yo, I hadn't looked at this part. She looked familiar, and I just associated her with Lincoln University and didn't think much more of it as it relates to that specifically. Wow. Wow, so this really does hit home. Yeah, because I had actually requested to do, a dual degree. And they told me that, girl, that's too much. We're not going to let you do that because we don't want you to blame us if you are unsuccessful in such pursuit. I could have done it, but nonetheless, wow. I was still very thankful that Dr. Akpala granted me permission to take leadership studies, doctoral level leadership studies classes with that. Hold on one second. I better plug in my the MacBook is low battery. Wow. So y'all, really, honestly and truly, let me go back here. Honestly and truly, some of us, we are doing dream work. We're doing passion. We're doing passion purpose work. And it does not lend well for anyone to enter into these programs and cheapen the integrity and rigor of these programs out of spite or economic plight. When we need solidarity, because if you come into a program, a PhD program or a master's program, and your intentions immediately are spite or economic plight, that means you're not there for the interests of anyone else. You're not there for the community of your peers. You're there to get a check, get in and get out. And that puts us in silos. And for the Black community, we don't need to be in silos. We are too disconnected. We need to be unified. And the best way to become unified is to be unified on common goals, common passion, common purpose. And so when it comes to education, the most readily assumed common purpose would be your field of study, the program that you're in. And here she was trying to fight this battle all by herself. And it's very obvious. When you get a chance, read the letter. It is something else. She goes into way too much detail for it to be falsified. She's listing dates, and I mean, this letter is thorough. And then I'm wondering, did the other administrators, did they come to her defense? And the way the letter reads, it doesn't appear that that was the case. And I understand that then, on the flip side, for even individuals who do have a genuine interest in the field that they pursue in a doctoral program, they become jaded and don't want to work in their field. They have a lower valuation. They devalue advanced academia in the specific aspect of, now I've got to work in this environment with these political bullies. In her case, it was a Caucasian man, a white gatekeeper on an HBCU campus. And I've spoken out about that. And that's how we'll end this broadcast. I'm not going to go into detail because there's already a video where I expound upon the harassment, and I mean pattern and practice. I started my program in 2014. Dr. Keith Schimmel started his tirade against me from that very moment. I believe he thought that if and when I got my degree, my PhD, that I would be considered by the university in replacing him as chair for that PhD program. And that's how he treated me. He treated me so despicably, so inappropriately, repetitively. I had to file administrative complaints against him just to continue my matriculation, just to get, just to continue the process. And he was a white male gatekeeper on an HBCU campus. And it was very disheartening. And I cannot absolve North Carolina A&T State University in any way, because at every instance of me reporting his harassment, his discrimination, and showing proof thereof, they would always, the counterpart African-American, my Black people, my supposedly, my skin folk, not kinfolk, but my skin folk at North Carolina A&T State University, where I had a long history of academic excellence. Personal and professional development, relations with good rapport with faculty and administrators and even chancellors. And not in fraternization, not in a status quo type of way, like just literally being a stellar student. And at every instance that I reported I assert that it was criminal behavior. At every instance that I reported his behavior, his misconduct, the letters would always read something like this: "We have conducted the investigation and we have determined that there is no evidence of that which you complain about." And I feel like she deserved to have camaraderie. She deserved to have a safe space in her workplace. She deserved to have that. But if we're pursuing degrees out of spite and economic plight, then the likelihood you're not going to work in that field. Because that was never the plan in the first place. When you talk, I mean, it's inherent to spite and economic plight. You're like, I'm done with that. It served its purpose. I'm going to do something else. And so that means there's going to be less people in her field, less support. She's going to have less peers that look like her, and thus less support, less solidarity, more stress and anxiety, feeling like she's all alone, having reported it, because her letter details, she reported Mosley's behavior over and over and over and over again, to no avail. But if we actually set out to pursue academia authentically, following our passion purpose, and then stay and continue to build these relationships that we should have developed with our peers, especially our skin folk in these programs. While students in the PhD program, we should have developed these relationships so that when we go out into the real world as Dr. So-and-so and Dr. So-and-so, that the solidarity continues without any pause from matriculation to doctor. No more silos. No more get it how you live it. No more YOLO. We got to get back to village thinking. We got to get back to group economics thinking. And I know it's very hard when you feel like you're in a space where nobody else is thinking along those lines. So you're like, I'm the idiot for thinking that way. I might as well go and do what I want to do. And I don't know if that's the case for the individuals that I highlighted in part one. I don't know if Dr. Monroe Steele intended that to be her path. I don't know if she got her degree in, I believe it was health and fitness, physical therapy, something to that effect. I don't know if she got her degree in that subject matter out of spite and economic plight. Like, okay, it's something I'm kind of interested in. Like, it's, you know, so it'll do, but it's not really what I want to do, but it'll do. And then, you know, took the student loans, flipped them to do what she really wanted to do. And straightly, that's unlawful. You're not supposed to take out a student loan to then use those funds to maybe grow a business. You're not supposed to use student loan funding to go and buy your first building or your first house and then flip it. And here's my honest flip side opinion on that. Okay. I fully understand because I'm really from there. I say that all the time. I'm really from there. And what that means is I'm really from the hood. I understand the mentality of carving a way out of no way. I understand the mentality of get it how you live it. But it no less makes it wrong or let me rephrase it. And no less makes it unlawful. I understand the mindset that would feel that there's nothing wrong with it because we're, getting our lick back reparations wise. I get it. But if all the outcome is going to be is just to benefit you and only you, then you've missed the whole point in getting your lick back. Because it's for us to get our lick back together. And not so much as our lick back, but justice. Unmitigated justice for us, unified. Not in silos. Doing our own thing without any real care for our brothers and sisters. But then trying to be the loudest person in the room, yelling Black pride, it just does not hold water. And I don't know if Destiny Chalmers, I don't know what her intentions were, because that was a very specific degree as well. I'm not, and I wish that they would have come on so that they could share their stories, but maybe their stories were traumatizing to them. I don't know. Or maybe they do feel somewhat embarrassed because they actually sought out those degrees out of spite and economic plight. It was to cop a check. It had nothing to do with rigor. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know, because they did not respond, or otherwise, in the case of Dr. Monroe Steele, she responded, but as I explained before, in a very belligerent way, very defensive way, which, it gives you the impression that possibly then she pursued her PhD degree out of spite or economic plight, but I don't know that. So I won't pass judgment in that regard. And again, this is all about objectivity, because the whole point of this is to figure out what we're doing together. And then strategize solutions for the issues that plague Black America. And we have to be willing to talk. We have to be willing to be open with one another. We have to be willing to at least have the conversation. And I made that available to them both. I actually reached out, let's be very clear, I reached out to about 8 or 9, because I looked up PhDs, JDs, Black women who are in digital content creation, social media influencers that have transitioned from this very hyper academic arena to the polar opposite in social media influencing. And none of them responded, with the exception of Dr. Monroe Steele. And again, as I've stated, she responded very defensively, unnecessary, completely unnecessary. And I tried to keep the communication going, and I was just like, this is not productive. And y'all know I'm not going to continue in conversation that's not productive. I would much rather not fight with another beautiful Black woman than engage completely minstrel arguing over nothing. There's nothing for us to argue about. I come in peace. I pass no judgment. I come in peace. And as much as I said that, I repeatedly said that. And my messages were very respectful, again, like to Destiny as well. But no one responded except for Dr. Monroe Steele. And as you see, I'm giving her respect. because she is Dr. Monroe Steele. Now, I don't even know, because my thought process, I'll tell you this and then we'll wrap it up. I actually thought that maybe, because I've watched her vlogs and they are awesome. Her vlogs are awesome. And I thought that, because within her vlogs, there's a component of her cooking meals. And we have this in common. So I was really, I was really intrigued in that regard. She prepares meals in a holistic manner, right? And y'all know that's my thing. If y'all know anything about me, some of you who are tuning in for the first time, your girl was raised holistic. That was my mom's thing. And I remain holistic. And I'm a scientist, so I've incorporated the two, and it's a whole lifestyle. And she also incorporates her fitness regime, you know what I mean? So, and she has a beautifully toned physique. She even has a collaborator, someone she works with, and I believe they started the fitness routines or together, or the other young lady started it, and Dr. Monroe still, joined in during the pandemic, and now maybe it's blown up to a full-blown business for the person who started it, right? So I was like, okay, maybe she's going to segue into her field. You see what I'm saying? She's going to use this. And I said, that's brilliant, awesome. And again, that's another reason why I'd love to hear your story. We'd love to hear your story. But I believe that she misread something that I put on my story on Instagram. And I was saying that we are our own worst enemy. And we are. And I do also realize that they're both AKA. So Dr. Monroe Steele is an AKA, as is Dr. Antoinette Candia Bailey. And I know that, not every AKA can be the anchor and support system for every other AKA. Some of them don't even know each other around the country, of course, because there's so many, right? But and I know unfortunately, we're going to lose some of our beautiful Black women to stress and anxiety. We are. That's an unfortunate but very real outcome that we must face. We're not going to be able to save everybody. But I think that Dr. Antoinette could have been saved. I think all she needed was solidarity. Because clearly, her path, everything that she did, her work on the campuses where she obtained her degrees, returning to the university where she obtained her bachelor's degree, that's love. That's love and commitment to her passion purpose. And that deserves our support. I am Tigress Sydney Acute McDaniel. This has been another episode of Evolve Weekly, the Ethical Gatekeeper. Join me next week. We will discuss another important topic, the due process is not processing. What are hearing rights? And do presiding judges have them? See you then.